All right, this is exactly what everyone has been waiting for. Before we jump into today's story, I want to take a second to recognize Kendrick Lamar, because with his birthday just passing, it's only right to celebrate one of the greatest artists in hip-hop. Happy 39th to a rapper who somehow keeps raising the bar instead of slowing down. And honestly, you won't believe how his momentum just keeps growing. If you're rocking with Kendrick, make sure to leave a like because that's your birthday salute, and every extra click only adds to the celebration. As for Drake, well, let's just say the jokes are still flying after everything that's happened, and the rivalry continues to fuel conversations across the culture. Hip-hop feels like it needs that Kendrick energy right now, especially with everything we're about to break down. Here's where things get really interesting, because today's update is packed with both exciting news and some seriously unexpected twists. The good news is that reports surrounding Kendrick Lamar's next album are becoming louder every single day, and the buzz doesn't seem to be slowing down. That usually means something major is happening behind the scenes, and when this much smoke starts building, there's often a fire waiting to be revealed. But that's not the only part of the story, because there's also a development that has plenty of fans scratching their heads. The latest round of album rumors apparently reached one of the loudest voices in hip-hop media, DJ Akademiks, and you already know that whenever he's involved, the internet pays attention. Whether you agree with his takes or not, he's built a reputation for getting people talking, even if his delivery leaves fans divided. While all this was unfolding, I was hoping to be surrounded by real hip-hop celebrations instead of another round of online drama, because that's the version of the culture I enjoy the most. Still, as strange as some of these conversations can get, they're important to understand if you want the full picture. So enough waiting. You won't believe what Akademiks had to say next, because this is where the story takes another turn.
I was expecting this album to come back. He might be reworking it. I heard he was working on some stuff. He might be reworking it. Now, I don't know the real contents of it, but I was thinking if he's going to drop something, he's going to drop a diss album to Drake. You know? Wait, hold on. Y'all forgetting about Not Like Us? Hold on. I got a whole album with these. Hold on now. Hold on. It's time to crip walk back again. What y'all doing? What y'all... Yo, hey. You better get back up on stage and twerk with that dictionary. Come on, let's get to it. So I was expecting that. Maybe he's reworking it. It'd be good if we could get some squabble ups mixed with some be humble, sit down, and some Luther. That's like a good mix of Kendrick if he does drop it.
That's enough of that. You've already heard the main point, so there's no reason to sit through the rest of the rant. What matters is understanding the narrative that's being pushed, and that's exactly what DJ Akademiks has been doing on his platform. To be fair, there is one part worth paying attention to. Akademiks is echoing the same industry chatter that plenty of other insiders have mentioned, that Kendrick Lamar is actively working on new music and that an album appears to be on the way. That's the believable part of the story. Here's where things start to fall apart. The claim that Kendrick's next project will be nothing but a diss album feels more like speculation than actual reporting, and you won't believe how quickly that idea spread across social media. Ironically, the same people praising Drake's recent music as a masterpiece are now trying to frame Kendrick's next move before anyone has even heard a single track. It's becoming pretty obvious that there's a coordinated effort to reduce Kendrick's entire career to being the Not Like Us guy, even though his catalog speaks for itself. Akademiks keep suggesting that Kendrick is about to release more records in that same lane, but that ignores the fact that Kendrick has already proven he can make massive records without centering everything around the beef. Even after all the success of those diss tracks, his music has always reached far beyond one storyline. Still, once Akademiks floated that idea, a lot of Drake supporters immediately embraced it and began treating it like the narrative of the week. Personally, I think people are underestimating Kendrick. If history tells us anything, it's that whenever fans think they've figured out his next move, he usually delivers something nobody saw coming. That's exactly why these predictions should be taken with a grain of salt. What really caught my attention wasn't just this clip, it was the bigger pattern that's forming. There are countless examples of similar talking points, but we don't need to waste time watching every single one to recognize what's happening. I could easily put together a compilation showing how parts of Drake's online community have rallied behind the same message that's been amplified by Akademiks. This clip is only a small glimpse into a much larger conversation. At the center of it all is the assumption that Kendrick's upcoming album has already been figured out before it's even been announced. Somehow the story has shifted into claims that he'll release a diss project and that he's supposedly reacting out of pressure from artists like Ice Spice, which honestly feels like a stretch. That's where narrative building starts replacing actual evidence. The bigger issue is that influential personalities like Akademiks continue shaping the conversation in ways that many fans simply accept without questioning. Even more surprising is watching some longtime hip-hop voices drift away from balanced music discussions. Figures like Joe Budden, who once focused heavily on rap analysis, now seem to spend more time making controversial comments than breaking down the music itself, including some of his recent remarks about Jay-Z. Lately, we've seen more and more conversations drift away from what actually matters in hip-hop. Instead, certain personalities spend endless time on random side topics while avoiding the biggest stories unfolding in the culture. And honestly, that's a discussion for another day, because we'd be here forever. There's simply not enough time to unpack all of that in this video. When respected voices lose focus and the loudest commentators start competing for attention instead of accuracy, the entire conversation changes. That shift doesn't just affect media personalities, it spills over into the artists themselves, where narratives and questionable claims begin overshadowing the music. Once you step back and look at the bigger picture, you start noticing a pattern that's been developing ever since the middle of last year. Whether people realize it or not, everyone watching these debates has become part of that cycle. The interesting part is that this approach couldn't be more different from Kendrick Lamar's usual formula. Kendrick has always seemed content to release the music, step aside, and let the work speak for itself. What we're seeing now is the complete opposite. Instead of allowing the music to create its own legacy, people are trying to write the story before the album even exists. That's the real strategy at play, and you won't believe how many fans have accepted it as fact. Another angle of this narrative is the attempt to completely reshape how people view Drake and Kendrick. Spend a few minutes online and you'll find fans portraying Drake as some untouchable lyrical mastermind while using the smallest examples to defend every bar he writes. I won't spend this entire video arguing over those debates because they usually go nowhere. The bigger issue is how some corners of the internet are working overtime to paint Kendrick as the exact opposite of everything his career
has represented. Instead of acknowledging him as one of hip-hop's most creative, fearless, and respected artists, they're pushing labels that simply don't line up with the body of work he's built. Now, the latest claim is that Kendrick has disappeared because he's supposedly under pressure and secretly rebuilding an album around the beef. According to that theory, he's hiding away trying to recreate another Not Like Us moment, instead of moving forward creatively. Honestly, that doesn't fit the way Kendrick has operated throughout his career. That's why these rumors feel more like fan fiction than legitimate reporting. The level of obsession surrounding these narratives has reached a point where some online communities seem more interested in winning arguments than appreciating the music itself. When you watch how far certain fans go to elevate Drake while tearing down Kendrick, it becomes clear that this isn't really about music anymore. Every day, another strange talking point shows up across social media, and somehow the conversation keeps getting even more unbelievable. Every day, it feels like another video pops up with someone passionately insisting that Drake's Iceman is the greatest thing happening in hip-hop, almost as if they're trying to convince the audience of something the music should be proving on its own. Instead of letting the album stand for itself, they spend their time attacking Kendrick Lamar, repeating the same talking points over and over again. The message is always the same. Kendrick is supposedly overrated, Drake is supposedly carrying rap, and somehow that's meant to settle the debate. But when every argument circles back to the exact same claims, it starts feeling more like a campaign than an honest discussion. Here's what really stands out. DJ Akademiks and many of the people following his lead have more than enough new music to analyze, yet somehow the spotlight keeps shifting back to Kendrick instead. That tells you everything you need to know. Rather than breaking down dozens of fresh songs, they're spending most of their energy keeping Kendrick at the center of the conversation. You won't believe how often that happens, and in my opinion, it exposes the bigger picture. At some point, it stops looking like objective commentary and starts looking like fans trying to validate Drake through constant comparisons. The louder those arguments become, the less convincing they actually sound. Now, to be fair, let's keep this balanced. If we're judging Iceman strictly as an album, I'd say it's a solid release. It's easily one of Drake's stronger projects in recent years, and you can hear that he sounds more engaged creatively than he has in quite some time. The momentum from the Kendrick battle also gave the project extra attention, making it naturally more interesting than many other rap releases this year. That's a big reason why it's generating strong numbers and dominating conversations. Of course, there are also debates about marketing, promotion, and every other factor that comes with a major Drake rollout, but that's a separate discussion. The point I'm making is simple. Compared to much of today's rap landscape, Iceman absolutely deserves to be part of the conversation. Some of that comes from Drake's massive fan base and the influence he has over the culture, while another part comes from the fact that the project genuinely shows improvement. Even so, I think we've reached a point where people have seen Drake's ceiling in this era. He can absolutely compete at the highest level, but that doesn't automatically make him the undisputed #1. That's the distinction many fans refuse to acknowledge. My view hasn't changed. Even if Drake somehow released the biggest commercial album imaginable tomorrow, the artistic conversation would still bring people back to Kendrick Lamar, because that's the standard many listeners continue to measure against. Here's the way I see it. It's not simply about saying Kendrick Lamar is the better rapper or that he's bigger than Drake. The real story is something much more interesting. Everything that's happened over the past year, including the reaction to Iceman, has highlighted one undeniable trend. As we move through 2026, it feels like every major conversation surrounding Drake somehow circles back to Kendrick. Whether fans are praising Drake, defending him, or arguing online, Kendrick's name keeps finding its way into the discussion. That's a pretty remarkable dynamic when you stop and think about it. Even when Drake drops new music, a huge portion of the conversation immediately shifts toward comparing it to Kendrick, instead of simply appreciating the project on its own. What's even more surprising is how often the people who claim they're tired of hearing about Kendrick end up talking about him the most. You won't believe how consistent that pattern has become. The more narratives, rumors, and online debates appear, the more attention Kendrick receives without even saying a word. In many ways, those constant discussions keep his name at the center of hip-hop, whether supporters or critics realize it. That's why attempts to control the conversation can sometimes produce the exact opposite result. Instead of minimizing Kendrick's influence, they often reinforce just how important he remains to today's rap landscape. Going back to DJ Akademiks and his latest claim that Kendrick's next project will supposedly be a diss album, I think fans should slow down before accepting that as fact. Whether Kendrick releases another battle record or delivers something completely different, history suggests he's rarely as predictable as people expect. If he surprises everyone with a project that sounds nothing like the rumors, the same people making confident predictions today will probably have to change their narrative overnight. And if there are a few competitive records on the album, that shouldn't shock anyone either. Hip-hop has always embraced that energy. Either way, people are going to analyze every lyric, every beat, and every interview the moment the album arrives. What's funny is that some of the loudest critics will probably spend more time dissecting Kendrick's project than discussing the artist they claim to support the most. That's been one of the biggest trends throughout this entire rivalry. Even after major Drake releases, social media somehow finds its way back to Kendrick, and that says a lot about where the audience's attention naturally goes. So my biggest takeaway from all of this is simple. The only part of Akademiks' report worth taking seriously is that multiple people seem to believe Kendrick is working toward another release. Everything else remains speculation until the music actually arrives. When that day finally comes, we'll get the real answers straight from the source, instead of relying on rumors. Until then, let me know what you think. Are you hoping Kendrick returns with another hard-hitting diss record, or would you rather see him take an entirely different creative direction on his next album?